It's election day, so we are going to be heading to the polls ourselves and voting on who stays and who goes for the St. Louis Cardinals in 2025.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans. I'm JD Hafford, and I'm a national radio sports anchor, born and raised in the Lou and a lifetime Cardinals fan, and I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Follow me on Twitter, X, at JD Sports Radio, the podcast. You can also follow that at LO_Cardinals. We want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. We're making the push for 11,000 subscribers. So if you haven't done that yet, if you haven't liked and subscribed, make sure you do that and help our channel grow and hit that notification button so you know when the new episodes are posted. This is a show serving Cardinal Nation and giving the best fans in baseball all of the info about the birds on the bat. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcoming in Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com on this election day. Thomas, how are you, buddy? Feeling good? Feeling strong?
Oh, yeah, I feel pretty good.
All right, good. I want to personally encourage everybody to go out and vote today. If you do have the means and you do have time, go on out there. It's very important to the country that your voice be heard. We're going to do some voting here today, Thomas. I hope you're ready for it because got some changes going on with the Cardinals. I don't know if you've noticed what's going on, but there is going to be a very weird offseason for this team because everything's different than what you and I have grown up with when it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals. Usually this point of the year, we're talking about, who are they going to spend all their money on this year? What free agent's going to come in and, help us move on to win another World Series? Like, what are we going to add? This is exciting. And instead, we're talking about who they might be getting rid of. And it all appears that they're going to get rid of a lot of guys. They did make an addition. Before we get to the voting and who we want to keep, who do we want to get rid of, they did make one addition because they got some open spots on that 40-man roster, and they were able to claim 24-year-old right-hander Roddery Munoz from the Miami Marlins. We've been seeing a lot of Marlins people, a lot of Marlins flavor coming back to the Cardinals. Obviously, John Jay got to see him up close. Brant Brown was probably familiar with him since he was in the organization. Probably called their old buddy Skip Schumacher. I haven't got any confirmation on that, but they probably called him to get his thoughts on what they thought about this guy. But the numbers aren't great, Thomas. You look at him, 2-7, 6.53 ERA. Struck out 70 and 82 in 2/3 innings, but he also allowed 42 walks, 26 home runs. Not a lot, just looking at those numbers gets you all that excited about this kid. But what are your thoughts on Roddery Munoz and adding him to the 40-man roster?
Yeah, his fastball is pretty live, and I think that's his calling card. He has time as a starter, although I don't know if that's quite the most beneficial for him.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't have any details about him. A lot of strikeouts, it seems. In the minors, he allowed less than a home run per 9 innings. So I don't know if the home runs in the majors were he just wasn't ready, he was overmatched, or if it was truly an issue that he didn't have in the minors. I don't know. Throw as many young guys as we can at the problem and see what sticks, I think, is the key here.
It was something that kind of worked for them when it was, putting that bullpen together this year for the Cardinals, where they just went out and got a bunch of arms and we're like, look, we're going to take our shot with some of these dudes and hopefully we can work them to where they're, major league players. And it's weird to me, like looking up his past, that I didn't realize how many organizations he'd already been with. Braves, Nationals, Pirates, Marlins. Now he's with the Cardinals again, just 24 years old. You mentioned he's had some success at the minor league level. His strikeouts per 9 were over 10 at every level until he got to AAA. And then, of course, the major leagues where they dipped a little bit. But 24-year-old pitchers with a guy who throws 95, 96 with some decent movement. As I mentioned in yesterday's episode, it's a nice little project for the Cardinals. And, maybe they can unlock something. It doesn't mean, they had some success with Ryan Fernandez this year. It's not like Dusty Blake, who's completely incompetent. I know people still have bad vibes from that first year with the team, but last year the pitching staff wasn't really the problem. So maybe they could do something there. So an addition doesn't cost them much. And like you mentioned, he made starts or whatever, but maybe he's a bullpen arm that they turn into that, and he could be more useful in that role instead.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they employ him, whether they commit to reliever and let it rip for an inning at a time, or try starter out as well.
So
he's cheap, he's young.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he's got, and it's not obviously a move that's gonna move the needles very much for Cardinals fans, but just a name to keep an eye on. So let's talk about the big names that unfortunately it seems like the direction the Cardinals are going into, despite shedding so much payroll already. They've declined the options on Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Keenan Middleton. They exercised their $1 million buyouts on those guys. Paul Goldschmidt's obviously gone. Andrew Kittredge is probably gone. I'm going to miss him. Matt Carpenter, also a free agent, somebody that, they may bring him back in the fold, but according to the reporting is that's about $50 million off the payroll already, which is a massive chunk. Yet it's probably not going to stop there. It appears that they're going to try to move on from some of these other veteran players that are on this team already with substantial contracts. So what we're going to do here today is we are going to be voting on whether or not we want to keep them or do we want to trade them. We're going to look at all the angles. We'll look at the money. We'll look at the stats. Got to look at the prospects behind them and make a decision on where we want to go with this Cardinals roster into 2025. So we're going to start doing that next. Voting time coming up on Locked On Cardinals. Guys, do you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? All right. It's time that you just stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you step up to the plate when it's time for action, so to speak. Hims is changing men's health care by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. It's real simple. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like the chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need to go and make one of those uncomfortable doctor visits. Guys don't like going to the doctor in the first place. Certainly not for something like this. Your medication gets shipped directly to you in discreet packaging for free, mind you. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. You can start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Thank you again for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. You can leave comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X anytime you want. Your feedback is always welcomed and encouraged. Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com. You can find him on Twitter X as well. He's always ready to chat and talk with all of the fans, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, which is the way a lot of Cardinal fans feel right now. I know that people are excited about them finally picking a direction. At the same time, this isn't the fun direction that most franchises want to go into, especially one as esteemed as the Cardinals. And, like I mentioned earlier, this is something we're not really used to, Thomas.
No, for the organization, with how successful they've been, especially these last 2 decades, it's weird to see selling and big name players going away from the team rather than coming in. I don't know, it's not as exciting, but then you look at the young guys below them and gives a little bit of refreshment to it, though, at least.
Yeah, I saw that you did a piece at RedbirdRants.com and talking about the power rankings and the Cardinals. I think it was 24 which that's a little scary because that puts you at the bottom of the barrel, really, with a lot of teams that I feel like the Cardinals are better than. That's below everybody in the division, even the Pirates, bro. Is this real life? Is this really where we're at, or do you think that's kind of maybe not a great ranking?
It feels a little bit low, but close enough to the range, like in that 20 to 22 range feels right for us. But then you look at the teams ahead, the Giants and the Blue Jays are right above us, and they're both better than we are. And then you look at the teams below, and we're definitely better. I think there's a big jump from 24 to 25. The Nationals are right after us, and they're close, but I'd say we're closer to the Giants than we are the Nationals, at least, if that makes sense.
And we don't know what this roster is going to look like yet. I mean, at this moment, they still got all of these guys, Nolan Arenado and Willson Contreras and Sonny Gray. But some people are probably going to go. And today we're going to vote on whether or not we, as fans, feel like these guys should go or they should stick around with them. So we're going to start with I'm going to go with somebody who feels like it's going to be a little more painful to watch him go. And that would be Nolan Arenado. Now, Arenado, we know he didn't have a great year. 272, 16 home runs, 71 RBIs, the OPS plus of 101, a far cry from his career numbers and averages. The defense, not great in the first half, way better in the second half. Obviously, being a finalist for the Gold Glove tells you that he could still pick it over at third base just fine. And I don't know what happened, what it was in the second half that got him better. I don't know if there was something. I always wonder if there's a moment, because you would see moments last year where Arenado all of a sudden would look like himself at the plate and at third base. I'm like, is he getting a shot or something? Is there something that they're giving him that's making whatever pain bothers him go away for a little bit? And, they never say that that's something that they did, but I always wonder if that's what went down. But your thoughts on Nolan Arenado? Obviously, a lot of money still attached to him. So what do you think the Cardinals should do? Is it time to move on, or is this a guy that we should be keeping?
I think there's mutual interest from both Arenado and the Cardinals to move on from each other. The challenging part is his no trade clause and his price. I would bet that he is traded. However, the return that we get may not be as nice as fans would want for a guy like him.
And this is something that we were texting earlier, and I was like, what do you think that, like, if they do trade a bunch of these guys, what kind of return are we looking for here? And you didn't give me the greatest answer. But you go ahead. Tell everybody what you told me.
I don't know. On the low end, it's probably a low A prospect who has potential. I think it's also possible that depending on how much money we ship with him, we could get a major league guy with 3 years of control that fits better in our window. It depends on how much money we send.
Isn't that crazy to think, though, as a fan? If you're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's trade, former all-stars like Arenado, Contreras, Sonny Gray. Guy was just second in the Cy Young, but we're going to get A-ball players in return? Like, oh, my God. Like that.
With potential. A-ball with potential, though.
That is frightening to me, Thomas. Like, Halloween's over. Don't scare me like that.
Yeah,
I hope the return's a little bit better than that. But it's something – here's the thing, though. It's something that I think you're right. Like, fans should be prepared to not expect like a top prospect from each organization coming over to the Cardinals because we're getting rid of these guys, because that's probably not going to happen whatsoever. So it is smart to prepare these guys, because I think a lot of people have in their heads, they think, we're trading Nolan Arenado, so we're going to get probably like their best hitter and best pitcher in their organization. That is not going to be the case whatsoever. And like you said, what money changes hands is obviously something that is going to be important in these deals as well. But as the GM, you're voting to trade Nolan Arenado. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, I'd say trade.
I think it makes sense too, with the money he's making, and the numbers don't lie. The decline that you're seeing of him, and just like you saw with Paul Goldschmidt, man, it's starting to go in the wrong direction. And maybe it picks up if he goes to a better offensive ballpark. We saw maybe the Houston Astros would be somebody that was interested in maybe getting Arenado if Bregman doesn't re-sign with Houston. And I was like, gosh, he's going to hit 30 bombs with Houston with the Crawford boxes in left field. Like, that is like the perfect ballpark for him and his swing. So if he does get moved and ends up having a bounce back year, it wouldn't shock me if he got out of St. Louis and was in a better ballpark for his particular hitting stance and the way he swings and stuff. It would make a lot of sense. So, but yeah, if he's willing to go and you can move on from this, here's a question for you. If he does move on, they trade Nolan Arenado, who's your first pick to fill in at third base? Because that's something that I thought about yesterday. I mean, Gorman obviously is something you think about. What about Brendan Donovan? A year removed from the elbow surgery, which was something that they worried about last year, which is why they kept him in left and second base more than anywhere else. What about Brendan Donovan over at third base? Would that be all right?
Yeah, I think Gould even mentioned him as an option at third base if Arenado's traded, but it probably depends on who they prefer at second more than anything. Gorman versus, they could both play, Gorman and Donovan. They're both left-handed too. Different profiles offensively, but it's probably whoever's better at either defensive position.
Yeah. I mean, they both make sense over there. Obviously, where are we putting Thomas Ajayci? I don't feel like you want to keep him
super util
as a bench bat. I don't feel like that's where you want to do with this guy, but I don't know. We'll see. It's very interesting to talk about where they're going to move some of these, because it's one thing that the Cardinals do have some versatility as far as where certain people can play. It's not like they're all just stuck in one position. Hell, people have brought up, why not move Jordan Walker back to third? I'm like, I don't know if we want to redo that yet, but just something people say. All right, let's move on to Willson Contreras, shall we? Willson Contreras, kind of an incomplete season, right? Because of the injuries. 262, 15 home runs, just 36 RBIs, which is hilarious to me that he knocked himself in 15 times. Outside of that, he only had 21 RBIs in half a season. OPS plus, though, 136. Obviously, he can still swing the bat. What's your vote? Are you keeping Willie or are you trading Willson Contreras?
You got to keep him. He's the heart and soul of the team with Lars Nootbaar. He's got a lot of potential still. He's improving behind the plate. I think you got to keep him.
Now, I'm going to make this argument with you of why trading him would make sense, and then see if it alters your view at all. You also got to remember you've got an Ivan Herrera, Pedro Pages, and a Jimmy Crooks coming up. So you've got some depth at the catcher position. Does that lean you in a different direction, or are you still keeping him? Because I'm with you. I love the dude, and I don't think the money he's making, because it's not Arenado money, it's not crazy money. He's a guy that I feel like he should stick around, and I do want to keep him, but I can see why the idea of trading him would make sense.
Yeah, I see the point there. He's got a lot of value still. He's not too expensive, and we have other catchers. I don't know, because I love the other guy too. I think Herrera makes more sense as a trade candidate than Contreras does. But you could go either way, honestly. Would you rather trade Herrera or Contreras?
I want to trade either one of them, to be honest with you. I want to hang on to them. I want to see one of them work out at first base and see if they can do anything over there as well. Because
I think if they don't do that, one of them's got to be traded, though. One of our catchers needs to be traded.
Yeah, because you just got so many, and you're not going to do the 3 catcher thing again. You're not going to make Contreras just a DH. Like you're still going to use him. So. Yeah, that's why it's kind of like, we got too many catchers in the house there. So what do we do with them all? I haven't seen whether or not in winter ball whether Herrera's even played yet. I haven't checked it out, but he is on Pujols' team, I believe. So I wonder if he's going to work him out at first base at all. I haven't even seen that yet, but that'd be something if he started to do that, because man, his bat sure looked pretty good to me, and that would be a solid bench bat when somebody else is catching, to have Ivan Herrera still on your bench. Let's move on to pitchers. Let's go Sonny Gray, 13-9, 3.84 ERA plus of 109, which was one of his lowest, actually, even though it's a pretty good season. ERA plus before that, 157 the year before with the Twins, 126, 112, 133, 162. Like, he's had some pretty good years. I still think he's a pretty good pitcher. I didn't see all that much that was wrong with Sonny. Obviously, giving up more home runs this year is not something you want to see. But I liked him. But this is more of a money thing than anything, because his money is going to escalate big time the next 2 years. And everybody wants pitching. And so it would seem that he would be a popular guy on, for people who are looking to trade, on the trade front there. Like, if somebody's trying to find a number 2 or even a number 3 for their rotation, become more dominant, one of these big market teams like the Dodgers or something like that, they would be interested. The problem is no trade clause, and he wanted to stay in the Midwest, which is why he was with the Cardinals in the first place. So what are your thoughts on Sonny Gray? Do you want to keep him or do you want to trade him? What's your vote?
I want to keep him, and I think he wants to stay too. I could see him being like kind of the father of the rotation for the next 2 years. We'll have a lot of young guys coming up, and he's an excellent leader. He was an excellent pitcher throughout his career. So I could see him guiding this next, like the McGreevy, Graceffo, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence, leading those guys through the last 2 years of his contract. He gets expensive, and he has no trade clause. I think that complicates things from a trade sense. And really the only team I could see him wanting to go to would be the Braves. Mm-hmm. They have been clearing out payroll space, so either free agent or trade. So they might be interested in a deal like that, but I hope he stays just to lead the rotation these next 2 years. We need a veteran in there with all the young guys, and he'd be a good fit.
Oh, you don't want him learning from Miles Mikolas or Steven Matz? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No. Please, no. I don't want more meatballs thrown over the plate. I'd like something with some movement at least.
What you do here is you slow everything down and you throw a 72-mile-an-hour curveball. That's how you get them.
Backyard wiffle balls all everywhere.
Yeah, I'm the same boat, man. I want to keep them. The Braves make a ton of sense. I've got friends in Cincinnati who are like, yeah, I think the Reds want to try to get him. I'm like, I'm not trading him to you. I'm sorry. I'm not making any of these in-division trades that's helping you guys out while we're trying to move on from payroll. So the Braves, as you mentioned, they've moved on from a lot of people. You know, Charlie Morton, Max Fried is a free agent. It appears they're going to let him walk. They don't want to really lock him up to a long-term deal. So somebody like Sonny Gray, 2 years, they can obviously afford him, and they got an option for that third year as well. So I feel like if the Braves are interested, that there could be something done there. You know, they'll just cost Ronald Acuna, something like that. We'll get him in return, right?
Yeah, right. Why not?
No big deal.
He's hurt.
It's easy. Let's go to Ryan Helsley, which this one's gonna sting, but I'm gonna vote. I'm just gonna start this off. I'm voting to trade him right now. That's how I felt since. Nothing against Ryan Helsley. A massive year, obviously. 7-4, 2.04 ERA, 49 saves, a record for the Cardinals. But arbitration, money's going to go up, and then he's going to be a free agent. You know he's not going to sign some extension. And you see the money that some of these closers are making now, and there is no way in hell I am paying Ryan Helsley. Great year. I get it. But he's had arm trouble, injury issues throughout his career, has the one big year. I'm not banking on that happening all the time, and I'm moving on from him. What's your vote?
Yeah, I think the slogan is like death, taxes, and relievers falling apart. Isn't that how it goes? Something like that. Yeah, you got to trade him now while his value is where it is. It's ridiculously high. He's a top 3 closer. You can't hold on to him if we're not contending. And I don't even think it makes sense to hold him to the trade deadline. That's even less control for a team that might be looking for bullpen stability at the off seasons when you have to trade him. It stinks. He's wonderful. He is a pitcher that we brought up through our system, something that we've been needing. The timing is just off because when we needed him to be good, we as a team are not good. So you have to trade him. Get whatever you can. Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about him and Clase from the Guardians as the 1 and 2 top relievers in the league. Like, I mean, we've had a lot of good relievers out there, and those are the guys that are shining right now. So, you know, if somebody wants to give me a bag for Ryan Helsley, and then they get to deal with his price going up and the injury issues that he's dealt with, by all means, you guys can have yourselves a Ryan Helsley, and the Hell's bells will ring for you. But it feels like it's time to move on if you're the Cardinals when it comes to him. All right, we're going to talk more about who stays, who goes, and makes our votes next on Locked On Cardinals. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, it gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. One of the things I hate about apps is that sometimes you can't maneuver it the way you want to. You're trying to find ways to get to a certain part to make a certain wager, and it becomes a pain in the butt, right? Not an issue with the FanDuel Sportsbook app. So when you get your hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, and you can view the live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. So here's what you do. You got to visit FanDuel.com, join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sonny is going to bring you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on all the teams during this offseason, even the ones that are doing things a little different, like the Cardinals this year, shedding some payroll. But, of course, you've got other teams in bigger markets who are looking to make major additions. I've heard of, the Yankees are, in the Garrett Cole and what they got to do with one. So all of that stuff. Sully's going to have you covered. He's got it. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Once again, we're joined by Thomas Gauvain from RedbirdRants.com. You can find him on Twitter X as well, at Thomas Gauvain. We are doing voting here today since it is election day, and we're voting on who the Cardinals should keep, who they should get rid of, going through the different names. Obviously, the big high-priced veterans. We just went through Helsley and Sonny Gray and Willson Contreras and Nolan Arenado. What about some smaller names maybe that we might get rid of? What are your thoughts on moving on from somebody like a Lars Nootbaar, Thomas? Is that somebody that you're interested in moving? I know that there's always this thing about Lars where, everybody loves him, got a lot of energy. He's a lot of fun, but he hasn't quite lived up to what I feel like the hype was when he first came up. You go and look at the numbers and the stats and the OPS plus. You're like, you see where he's good, but then you're like, you're watching it. The eyeball test tells me like I still haven't seen him become that guy that I thought he was going to be. Is this the time that you try to move on from him?
I think just for that reason, you hold on to him for just a little bit longer. He closed out last year very well, the last month or two. I think he's a trade deadline guy that you got to keep. Let him flourish in the first half. Let his value go back up to where it was a couple of years ago. And then you see what the market is for a player like him.
Okay.
His baseball savant is still really good. And a lot of teams look at those underlying metrics to see what a player's potential is. If he can stay healthy, even play, lead up to the deadline, 80 games, give or take, 85 games up to that point, get 90% of his starts in, he probably has a lot of value at the deadline for teams, not necessarily right now.
Okay. Yeah, just something to keep in mind as they make these moves because, you've got a decent set of outfielders, and we're going to have to find room for all these guys. Once again, it seems to be the problem. And I don't know. He's just a guy that some people have brought up, like, I'm just over him. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Let's go back to the pitching staff. Here's a name that most people keep forgetting he's on the freaking team, and that's Eric Fedde. All right. Eric Fedde comes over from the White Sox last year, is not what we wanted him to be in the first few starts. Right. And then by the time he turns things around, we're already out of it. The season's pretty much in the bag. So, but he's still under contract. He's not costing a lot, $7.5 million next year, which is why he's kind of appealing for other teams. Is this a time to move on from Eric Fedde and see what you can get for him, or do you hang on to him? And is he somebody who is a trade deadline guy in your eyes?
Yeah, I think trade deadline, again, same idea as Nootbaar in a way. His value isn't quite as high right now as it could be. Teams get really desperate for starting pitching at the deadline. He feels like a guy who can hold a place in the rotation until someone like Tink Hence or Quinn Matthews is ready in the second half. Let him play out the first half. Let him get his 3.8 ERA, 15, 20 starts, and then see what value he has at the deadline. He's not going to win us a playoff spot necessarily, but he's going to keep us in games still, which is something we might need with rotation that's leaning young this year.
Yeah, because the other guys in the rotation right now, for now, Sonny Gray is still in there. And then we got a couple other guys we need to talk about, Miles Mikolas and Steven Matz. We've had this discussion before. Of the two, Matz has more trade value for teams. Left-hander, obviously, doesn't hurt him. But the fact that he can do starting rotation if you need him, or he's been quite comfortable as a bullpen guy as well. What are your thoughts on Steven Matz? Is it time to move on from him now, or do you want to wait till in the season and see if you can get more for him?
I think you got to move on from him now. His salary is not too much. Is 12.5? Is that right for next year?
It's like 11. I think is
Okay.
where he's at. It was a 4-year,
Yeah.
44. So, but I'm sure there's some money in and there. But right around there.
Yeah, I think that's a salary that's pretty easy to move, even if you throw in $2-3 million just to balance it out a little bit. He seems like a good offseason trade candidate for a team that's just looking for a swingman, fill in 100, 120 innings possible this year, and just get some time on the mound for them.
He's just got to stay healthy, man. It's really nothing against Steven Matz. Like when we have seen, I'm sure he's had some games where he's just complete garbage. But it seems like as soon as he kind of gets used to being on the mound again, is when he starts to be the guy that you thought you were getting him when you signed him. The problem is he's never able to stay on the mound. So, again, I'm ready to move on from that. It's like, bye, I appreciate you, but I need people who can get the ball each and every day, which brings us to our next guy who will take the ball each and every day, Thomas. The problem is a lot of times he gets shelled, and that is Miles Mikolas. He's in the final year of his deal. He's making a buttload. Here's something that I didn't realize, and maybe you can confirm with it. So I saw in one of Katie Wu's articles on The Athletic, she mentioned that Mikolas has a no trade clause. I've never seen that. Where did the hell that come from? Because when you go, right, so guys, if you don't do this, if you go to Spot Rack, all right, and you can go to people's contracts and whatnot, and there'll be a little card there that says NTC, no trade clause. I've never seen that on Miles Mikolas' page ever in my life. And then in Katie's article, it says that he's got one. And I'm like, wait, what? When did this happen? That makes things a little more difficult. But where are you with Miles Mikolas? Are we keeping him and just letting this play out? Or do you think, will there be somebody who, could use a guy like him in the 4 or 5 role, which, they can trust him to make 30 to 33 starts?
Yeah, the fact that Patrick Corbin has had a job for the last 5 years leads me to believe that someone will take his 200 innings and 5.5 ERA.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of value still there. I mean, you got a guy who is going to get 30 starts, who has experience, who is going to be able to keep a calm head in moments. That's more valuable than some 22-year-old you're just going to fling out there and see what happens, if that makes sense. If you can't trade him, you just got to cut him. He's not a benefit to us at this point in the rebuild. He's just taking up a spot that could be given to somebody else as we reset for the future. I've been on the cut or trade train for Miles Mikolas, whatever it takes, for a pretty long time now.
Yeah. 15 quality starts last year, led the team. It still blows my mind that that's a real stat. I was like, when did those happen? I don't remember that.
I'd love to see his run support then. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the same way. Like, it's just time to move on. And if you get what you can, and again, be somebody else's problem. I keep saying that phrase over and over. It's just, I just want something else. Like, you can't tell me there's not something better for you out there than what you're getting from Miles Mikolas over the last 2 years. It just shocks me. I want to throw this to you real quick before we let you go. I got a text from our guys over at Locked On Angels talking about Nolan Gorman. And the idea was, let me get the full text here from him. So just to get your thoughts on this, because he was asking about Nolan Gorman's availability. And I was like, well, I'm not saying he's untouchable, but he says, do you think the Cardinals would be interested in trading him for like a swap for Reed Detmers? Another young guy who just hasn't been able to get it going in LA, about the same age, not making any money. What would your thoughts be on something like that, a Nolan Gorman for a Reed Detmers deal?
I think Reed Detmers has tremendous value still. His stats wouldn't tell you that, but he's a young guy. He strikes out a bunch. He's got team control. I would probably do that trade. You lose the
Thomas
power.
Just perked up. Did you guys see that? Thomas got excited about that idea.
You lose the power that Gorman brings, but you also get a pitcher who fits in the window too. I think I'd do that trade. It probably leans more like we're probably giving up more than the Angels are. So that if they want to throw in another guy or some random 20-year-old who is a lottery ticket, that probably bounces a little bit more. But I think that's a good trade for us.
Do you think Gorman's somebody that it's time to move on from? Because that's somebody that I told him. I was just like, the problem with the Cardinals is that they hang on to guys too long, and then they give up on guys too early. They haven't been able to find that happy medium yet, and they get burned, it seems like, either way that they go. And I feel like there's probably a little PTSD from giving up on a guy too early. And, we've seen Gorman, even though he ended the year at AAA, where, he had 19 home runs basically in the first half of the season. We know that the power is there. Is it too early, or is this something that you're okay with moving on from, whether it's with the Angels or any team, if they call?
Yeah, it's a silly answer, but it depends on the return. Like if you're giving up Gorman for prospects who could pan out, who couldn't pan out, that's different than a guy who has MLB statistics and a track record. That makes it a little bit easier to swallow, because then either way, the Angels could see a bad Gorman and we get a good Detmers, or vice versa. And then both teams are taking an equal amount of risk there.
Yeah, I was like, what about Joe Adell coming our way instead? And then he was like, nah, we love him. He's probably not going anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
Which
I don't think we need a high strikeout center fielder again, though.
Yeah, well, I was just because he was a guy like watching him play, like when you watch those West Coast games late at night, and you see him, and I'm like, God, he's such a freak, like athlete out there, and you can see why everybody loved him. But yeah, he had a pretty good year this past year for the Angels, so he was like, we're probably not going to do that. Anything about him, he's going to stick around for a while. But anywho, so those are our votes. So it seems like we're trading a lot of people, Thomas, and the way that things are going for the Cardinals, and we seem okay with it. I feel like we've accepted that this is what's happening, and we're just hoping for the best deals possible. And hopefully that this reset isn't something that takes, 2-3 years or something like that, this is the ugly year, that it all goes down and then things are back up and going back to normal when they get this TV stuff figured out going into 2026. But it might be a tough year for the Cardinals, man. I hope we're all prepared.
Yeah, just meet the stages of grief. See where you are. Acceptance. That's the last one, right? We're there.
Acceptance. Exactly. That's where we're at. We'll see if things get more interesting. GM meetings going on in San Antonio today. So business will probably pick up here real soon, and we'll have more answers for you than questions. So Thomas, as always, brother, I appreciate you coming on and chit-chatting, and we'll talk to you again real soon, okay?
All right. Thank you, JD.
All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today and every day. If you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter X at @LO_Cardinals and at JD Sports Radio. Like, subscribe on YouTube, help our channel and our love for the Cardinals grow. And of course, give our man Thomas a follow and make sure you're reading up on all his good stuff at redbirdrant.com. You guys are the best fans in baseball for a reason. We'll talk again soon on Locked On Cardinals.